One of the newer North American road race tracks, Barber Motorsports Park is also one of the most beautiful. It winds through the tailing ends of the Appalachian foothills and is renowned for its immaculate landscaping. It's often referred to as the Augusta National of Racing. High praise indeed. Originally designed as a motorcycle racing track, it is billiard table smooth. It is extremely flowing with no real hard braking or big traction events, and it folds into that flow 80 feet of elevation change. It is a pure momentum track, and so in the auto racing world, it might just be tailor-made for, yep, Spec Miata racing. And that's what we have in store for you tonight as the Full Send Sims Esports iRacing debut season continues with round 4 of the Spec Miata Season 1 here at Barber Motorsports Park. Hi folks, I'm Greg Kramer. With me as always is Kyle Heyer, and I'll tell you what, Kyle, as the Aussies would say, this track is a real beauty, mate.
It really is a beauty, Greg. It's a fantastic circuit, lots of flowing corners, tons of elevation change, big wide curbs to sling these Spec Miatas around. It's going to be a blast to watch tonight. It's got some challenges as well because of that elevation change, a couple blind corners, and of course you have to look at some corners like the hairpin here, as well as the descent into the corkscrew. Lots of weight transfer to play with here, Greg. This is a great learning racetrack, I think, for vehicle dynamics, high speed, low speed, elevation. It's got everything in between.
It really does, and as you said, it presents its challenges. And one of the cool things is we have one of the newest of the instructors for the Full Send Sims esports program has been working with you, Kyle, and you guys have put together a bit of a look at this absolutely marvelous track.
Yeah, Morgan Burkhardt from Delta Sport Racing. He's in the number 40 on the top of the scoring right now. Let's jump to his onboard lap here at Barber Motorsport Park.
Hello everyone, my name is Morgan Burkhardt for Delta Sport US, and tonight I'm going to do a lap guide of Barber Motorsports Park. It's a 2.38 mile course with 16 corners, and as we're coming down the front straight, looking for our brake marker here on the right, we're going to brake at the one, kind of drag the brakes to get a little bit of entry rotation, hop over this curb, wash that as much as we can, and then kind of keep it tight through turn 2 and 3. We're just going to keep it to the inside of the track. You can really use all of the exit curbs we get on the throttle and kind of track out wide. Really steep uphill part here. We want to take the shortest distance that we can to minimize the scrub. As we come down into a double apex hairpin, we're going to brake at the one, angle it towards the corner, hit the first apex, get on the throttle, hit the second apex, just stay up on that curb the whole way around the corner early as possible as we can on the throttle, as it's a fairly long straight for this track up to what I like to call a sendy section. So we're going to kind of come in, start turning at the one, start to trail on the brakes over this curb. As soon as we get into the second curb, hammer the brakes as much as we can, early throttle on the second piece, get a late apex, carry as much speed as we can through this straight. As we come through into this little chicane section, we're going to kind of just take the shortest distance that we can, flat out through here. It's not really a problem in this car. You can go through too wide if you wanted to. Just shortest distance we can, minimize the distance traveled so that we minimize lap time. And then through chicane, flat out on entry, we're going to kind of dab the brakes just to get it settled and get rotation in, carry as much speed as we can, and then through the final section of corners, turn 14, flat out on entry, kind of dabble on the brakes to get it rotated and get the correct line in for turn 15. We're going to come kind of a late apex there, so we can come track right for turn 16, carry as much speed as we can onto the front straight. And that is a lap of Barber Motorsports Park for Full Send Sims Esports.
And Morgan putting all of that knowledge to good use as he is up on top of the charts right now. But just a couple of seconds before we came back, Skip Brock was within 0.2 of a second of Morgan, but Rowan Gill now has split him, Kyle. He's only 0.16 off of Morgan Burkhardt, so things looking really close. And right now, it's going to be interesting to see just who can dial it up, because we're almost into the final 5 minutes of this session.
Yeah, the drivers have 10 minutes of qualifying before our two 25-minute races here this evening. Rowan Gill, as you mentioned, jumped up to second place with a 1:44.344. It's about a tenth and a half off of Morgan Burkhardt at the moment. A couple new players we're noticing on the timing and scoring, as you pointed out to me. Olivier Piatek in the number 11 sits fifth here, Greg. He could be a factor tonight.
Yeah, he's been impressive from right up near the sharp end of things all the way through the practice session as well. and maintaining that position at this stage. And I mean, take a look at what we're looking at right now. The top 8 in this session right now, Kyle, are covered by less than half a second. So this is going to be some seriously close racing.
As it was last week at Sebring, the driver that came out on top of both of our 2 25-minute races was Rowan Gill in that 174, and it was real close in race 1, Greg, as you remember. That was 0.03 of a second was the winning margin. You could fit many of those finishes between where Burkhardt and Gill are on the racetrack, and they're not that far apart in terms of time. It's really impressive. It was a lot of fun to watch Rowan battling through the field there. But Morgan Burkhardt, for the first time this season, didn't get a win in either of those 2 races. He had won basically everything up to that point, Greg, so he's looking for a rebound this week and maybe claim a victory or 2.
Yeah, he's well motivated for sure. And the difference between Sebring and here, there's a couple of them. One is, of course, Sebring incredibly bumpy. This place, as I said, billiard table smooth. 2, Sebring has 17 turns, but it's almost 4 miles in length. This track is 17 turns, but it's less than 2.5 miles in length. So everything comes at you a lot quicker here. Normally, the shorter the track is, the more compressed the times are in terms of gaps between, first on the grid and backaways. And I think we're seeing that play out big time right now.
Gordon Butler in the 72 car up to 4th place. And coming through the final corner here, I love how this track flows, Greg. It's got a great flow to it. You never really slow down all that much, even in the tightest corners. You're still carrying pretty good speed. Also got a lot of camber to lean on here, but one of the challenges I think we'll see drivers deal with tonight, we'll talk a little bit about more of this later, but just tire conservation and keeping heat out of the tires. You're leading so much on the left side tires in particular around some of these fast corners.
Yeah, and a lot of these turns are long duration, aren't they? Even turn 5, which is sort of a hairpin, but it just continues to go on while you're through it. But you look at 1 through 4, 5, as I mentioned, 9 goes on for a while, and certainly from 13 to 16, that's almost a quad apex corner. So you're right, you're just pasting those tires.
Gordon Butler's got the 40, the provisional pole sitter right behind him, trying to get a little bit of a slipstream. Now, this isn't going to have the straightaways that we saw at Daytona or Sebring, but I still think we could have a little bit of slipstreaming on that front straightaway, maybe down the backstretch as well, but it's not going to make up 1/10 of a second or seconds by any stretch. This is one of those racetracks that you can drive away, even in a Miata, if you know what you're doing around here, and I think Morgan Burkhardt is testing to see how much that slipstream is worth.
And he is so savvy, obviously, with the success he had at just trying to figure out, you can get a little bit of a toe, right? But if these straights are relatively short, so you get that little bit of a toe, but if you then get run up on the back of the guy right before you get into the braking zone and you have to lift, well, you've just negated anything you may have added in that toe, plus probably a little bit more. So that's going to be something you're going to have to be really, really mindful of.
The other thing to be considerate of is that this track will bite you if you step outside of the track limits. There is some paved runoff, but even in the places where it exists, like here in the S's, there's a strip of grass before you get to that pavement. And I guarantee you that if you've got those left side tires loaded up coming out of the S's and you clip that grass, it's going to hurt before you get to the pavement. So this is a high risk, high reward racetrack in terms of carrying speed, Greg. If you lift, you're going to get passed tonight. And I think the drivers are going to do everything in their power not to lift.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. At best, if you get off onto the grass, it's going to hurt you in terms of time and position. At worst, there's some areas here that if you happen to have side-to-side contact in areas where there isn't that big ring of gravel outside of that grass verge, it's right into barriers. So you're right about the high risk, high reward concept here. And there's also seeing a great example there. There's a lot of these turns you're going through, you're entering or you're exiting, and it's completely blind.
I have some other great news for you, Greg. We're looking
What's
at
that?
the 172 at Cork Schmidt, different paint scheme this week. We'll be able to tell them apart from the other drivers that we kept mixing them up with because they're all running blue cars. So full send Sims livery on Cork Schmidt's 172 tonight.
Yeah, he said that was coming, and it's great to see it. And of course, Full Send Sims, the title sponsor, and Court and his company, the people who envisioned this entire series. So huge thanks to them as always, and Court known to be a pretty good wheelman as well.
The 20 seconds left here in qualifying, and of course, because we're running heat formats here in iRacing, which is the platform for this series, we will not get closing moments after the checkered flag flies. As soon as the checkered flag is out, that will end the session. So Morgan Burkhardt should stay on top of the standings here, Greg. Let's have a look at our track map here tonight. This is a challenging racetrack with 16 corners, and it all starts with a run down the front stretch into turn number 1, that left-hander. But all the flow that I was talking about, that's going to beat up the tires tonight on high-load corners in particular.
Yeah, and as you look at it, there's no real heavy braking. I mean, down into turn 5, probably the heaviest, but you're also really trail braking in and just flowing through that corner. But the big thing is, look where it drops exit of 1, right, Kyle? And it climbs up into 2. You don't see the exit of that turn when you go into it. Same thing going up into that great complex 8 to 9. When you come up through, those little twisty bits there, you don't see the exit at all. And this track has so much of that, so you're really driving in to a lot of these corners just on faith, and that's always something that takes a little bit to get used to. But I think you're right with you just never really slow down here, and it's really going to take these cars with the additional weight that this formula, if you will, carries. It's going to hurt, isn't it?
It will, and you mentioned corners that you can't see very well. The other thing is you have to commit to them with the load on the tire. We talk about turn 2, for example. There's camber here, but you have to lean on it, and you have to throw the car pretty aggressively in there. And if you miss the turn-in point just by a little bit, you can find yourself in the gravel traps. It is just a place that will penalize you. But it's fun when you get it right, Greg. We've got a full pace lap, so plenty of time to get through our starting lineup tonight, and plenty of time for drivers to get heat into the tires. You're not going to want too much heat, but just a little bit to get you started. Track temp is 92 degrees Fahrenheit and air temp about 77. So pretty warm day here in Leeds, Alabama. But the starting lineup, Greg, we're going to roll across the bottom of the screen.
All right, and there it is on the pole once again. Morgan Burkhardt, the number 40. Rowan Gill, the number 174, starts alongside.
Row number 2, it's going to be Skip Brock Jr., the number 32, and Jordan Butler in the 72. Strong top 5 qualifying effort for Butler.
Moving to row number 3, it's going to be the newcomer, Olivier Piatek, in the number 11, with Caleb Patry in the number 998, starting 6th.
In row number 4, it's Nicholas Rice-Budo in the number 4 car. Beans Forster, second in the points, rolls off 8th in the 23.
Yeah, those two guys well up in the points, a little bit farther back than we usually see them in qualifying. Starting 9th, 51, Raymond Blethen. Starting 10th, Max Bankin, number 14.
In 11th, it's going to be Brennan Horn in the number 45, and Gianni Morrow in the 24 car starts 12th.
In the 13th spot, it's Max Schwei driving the 98, and driving the number 88, Jason Meyer starts 14th.
15th place is Carlos Mendana's number 27, and Levi Knupp in the 931 rolls off 16th.
Starting 17th, it'll be Seth Spolman in the number 42, and Brian Horowitz on board the number 21.
19th place, Court Schmidt in a brand new livery on the 172. Deacon Greenfield starts 20th in the 22 car.
Starting 21st, the number 9 of Christian Rice-Budo, and Wayne Buttermore starts 22nd in the number 73.
And 23rd place, Luis Malares in the 08, and Caleb Pocock rolls off 24th in the number 6.
Starting 25th, it'll be Carson Neal driving the number 117, and joining him in the 26th spot is Alfie Zidane, number 13.
And 27th and 28th, our final row tonight. Enrique Tamayo and Rich Green wrap up our final 2 rows. Before we get Green, quick look at your driver points. Morgan Burkhardt leads by a whole bunch over Nicholas Rice-Budo and Beans Forster, but those two could still run him down. There's still plenty of time left in this season, and we'll keep an eye on those as we carry on through the week. Morgan Burkhardt leads the way.
You bring up a really good point. When the last checker flag flies here, we'll have hit the halfway point of the season. So as you said, plenty of racing to go. And Burkhardt with Gill alongside through that long final corner, turn 17. And we are getting ready to go. Race 1 of 2 here at Barber Motorsports Park. Watch for it. A couple of drivers peeking early. Boy, late flag. We're green. A couple of cars popping out, but right now it looks as though Gill on the outside got the nose ahead. We'll see if he's able to make that pay. He and Burkhardt side by side down to turn 1. Contact about 5-6 cars back. More cars involved. Boy, a whole bunch of them have been caught up in this one.
Oh man, big mess in turn 1 to turn 2. They're still slipping and sliding, gathering it back up, and big time damage for some of our big players there. The 88 car of Jason Myers, that car is absolutely destroyed. The 6 of Caleb Pocock had to wait for him to roll, but Rowan Gill to the lead here, Greg, into 5, and big dive.
Oh, what a move and what track awareness. That was Skip Brock making the move And Rowan Gill showing track awareness, seeing him coming, open the wheel up to not turn into him. That was absolutely brilliant.
Here comes.
Excuse me, I was Burkhardt who opened the wheel up and let him through.
That could have been a lot worse. Look at this, the 72 and Petrie slipping and sliding past each other on the run down to the corkscrew. Some contact nose to tail.
That is such an amazing corner complex and huge commitment, as we've talked about. Now things may be starting to settle just a little bit. They head toward this quick flick, 10 and 11, using that curve big time. And then another short shoot, and that 12-13 complex, really important to get your line set up for that big triple apex right-hander that they're starting into right after this turn. And there's that blind climb, and then it's blind up and over the rise, and as you come over that rise, you've got to be on the right line because you got to turn in immediately.
On board with Nicholas Rice-Sputo in the number 4 car. Looking to the inside of Beans Forrester, who's third in the standings. My mistake there. And then ahead of them is Jordan Butler, who dropped 2 spots after a little bit of a kerfuffle with the 998 of Patry down into the corkscrew. So a wild lap 1 here, Greg, but we've got a lot more to go.
That we do. And right now, Gill up front, but by almost nothing over Burkhardt. And nobody's really making any break. Yes, it's very early here, but we've seen that happen. Although you take a look at Gill and Burkhardt, Kyle, might be opening up just a little bit of a margin back to Brock and Piatek.
About a half a second back to Skip Brock Jr. in the number 32. Down into turn 5. Will there be a look? No, Burkhardt's going to stick in line here and play ball. However, Beans Forrester will trade spots again with Jordan Butler. Butler does a great crossover at the exit of 5 and takes the spot back, opens the door for Rice-Sputo.
Yeah, Forrester got, as he made that move, had to float out way, way wide. And Rice-Sputo, at this stage at least, has the nose ahead. And I think that's a smart move by Beans to just tuck in behind him and say, well, that didn't work, but don't make it worse now by trying to go side by each up into the corkscrew. And now they come out of that corner complex. And no matter where we're looking, got some great stuff going on. There's the 73 of Buttermore, and it looks like he's working over the 27 of Bendana just a little bit.
This is for 16th place. The battles abound everywhere. Look at this for the top spot, though. Again, Burkhardt is right behind Rowan Gill. And again, they're kind of doing this co-opetition thing that we've seen week after week. I just don't know if that's the game you can play here. There's so many drivers that can sneak up into this mix, and Skip Brock Jr., he's been willing to mix it up all season long.
He has, and we saw that in that opening lap down into turn 5, into Charlotte's Web, as they call it, when he just threw it down in there. He's got a little bit of a break right now. He's been able to use, I think, that draft, the double draft to Gill and Burkhardt. Brock able to ease away just a bit from the white number 11 of Piatek.
Into turn 1 again.
Oh, look at the tire marks. That's what you're talking about.
Yeah, just so much load on the tires. And again, these cars are carrying 250 kilograms of extra weight to make them drive similarly and have similar dynamics to the NB generation Mazda MX-5. A little bit of contact there between Patry and Rice-Sputo coming up the hill, but that extra weight, Greg, it's a lot more to throw around in a high load racetrack in these fast corners.
Yeah, it is, and it doesn't just take its toll on tires in terms of cornering, but you've got to slow it down and you've got to accelerate it. And in these cars, the acceleration thing is of great concern because you don't have, oodles of horsepower. So that's why you drive these things just trying to conserve momentum like crazy. But you don't worry too much about braking here. So most of the loads on this one are indeed those side loads. Ooh, float a little wide, but nice save there by the 72 of Butler.
One car off in the weeds over there. That's Brian Horowitz in the 21. That car has got some damage. Let's go back and see if we can find what happened to him.
Oh, he's going to nose in.
Right here, down the hill, and he gets back on throttle. Does he clip the grass just with the left rear tire?
That's all it takes.
And boop.
Yeah. And that's what you were talking about, isn't it? When you're loaded, and it's so much load on those outside tires in these long duration corners, you just touch that grass, you're gone.
And there's some curbing here that'll save you on corner exit, but here, look at the final corner, turn 16. That curb is a tire width. If you step beyond that bound, you've got now the entire weight of the car loaded up on those right sides exiting that corner. If you're in the grass, you're going to lose all that grip there in a split second and have a fun time trying to hang on to it.
I'll tell you what, Caleb Patry doing a nice job, snuck around Olivier Piatek and picked up that spot now in he was in the top 5, but now he's gone to 4th at this stage. But that little bit of racing that they did has allowed Gil, Burkhardt, and Brock up front to build that little bit of a margin. It's almost a second now back to Patry and Piatek.
Yeah, I think what I was saying earlier with these drivers kind of playing by the rules here and staying nose to tail, I don't think this is a faster way around Barber Motorsports Park like we would see at Sebring or Daytona. I think this is going to kind of cause an accordion effect in these fast corners where you can't follow super closely. So I think Patry will be able to eat into this lead some. He was 2/10 slower last time by, but I think that 998 is going to be a 4th car in this mix here shortly. And Piatek and Rasputo and more, they might become a part of this pack here as we get closer to the end of this race.
Well, I think part of that, isn't it, that this track just doesn't have any of those real long straights where that draft is really going to make a big difference here. You know, every time you get a good run, suddenly you're turning again, and you've got to be driving through that windshield in front of you. Look at the cars move around here. You know, that's the weight, that's the compliance of the suspension, and you really feel it when you're on board these babies.
Yeah, you can see how much that 174 is leaning.
Yep.
And yeah, again, we saw a peak speed of 100 miles an hour heading off into the back straightaway, so really not at a speed where the draft is appreciable. On the front straightaway here, though, we might get closer. Not 97, 98, 99, 99 miles an hour, so barely hitting triple digits here, Greg. So that draft is going to be pretty negligible in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And Burkhardt there, you saw he dropped his right side tires. Good thing he got him back onto the track before he started to square up into one, because that would have sent him flying. And they did a nice job to save it. And every time we see these two open up that little bit of a margin, Brock just finds some pace. And you were dead right about Patry. Look at him close up on the back of these guys. And Piatek now not too far behind him either, because so we could be back to a 5-car battle for the lead here, pretty short order.
Think so. There's a battle back here, and one car in the gravel.
Yeah.
That's Levi Knupp, another driver running a different paint scheme this week.
Yes, he is.
And go back a little further to catch the beginning of this incident. This was down into turn 2, and the 10 runs off. That's Enrique Tomeo, comes back across the road.
Oh,
there's that touch.
Yeah, and Tomeo caught some air as he was trying to keep his foot in it and come back onto the track. And, you know, you do have to be a little mindful that, you know, when you have an off like that, you can't just come bombing back onto the track. It's called an unsafe re-entry. And officials tend to look a little askew at that.
Yeah, it's one of those things in the moment. You're not thinking about it. You're just trying to get the car back on track. And then a second later, you've caused an incident. And that would be something that would get under review pretty quickly. And is generally an open and shut case when it comes to coming back on track and causing an incident. But 16 minutes to go, and Morgan Burkhardt's still hot on the heels of Rowan Gill. They continue to be basically touching bumpers down the straightaways.
You have to wonder, you know, is this where Burkhardt wants to be right now, or would he rather be up front? Because it seems like those pursuing, they can close up pretty much at will, even when they open up a little bit of a margin. And the interesting thing to me, Kyle, is when the gloves come off here, this could get absolutely insane.
It sure could, and I think Morgan's got to be confident in his single lap pace, but maybe he's more confident that Rowan Gill's a little slower, so giving him the thought that Rowan's actually controlling the pace, but when push comes to shove, I think Morgan's going to have a move to say with Rowan Gill. We'll see what happens, but I think Morgan's toying with him more than he is following him for strategic reasons.
Now, in the background, I saw Rasputo float way, way wide. Beans Forrester was able to sneak underneath him and has picked up that 6th spot now.
And I wonder if he can close up the gap. It's 1.7 up to Piatek in 5th, so that's not an impossible hill to climb. We're only 10 minutes into this race and 15 minutes to go.
And look at the different lines there coming out of that 10-11 complex. Burkhardt runs a really different line than Gill. And I don't know what, you know, at this point, it's tough to tell if one's better or you know, one is significantly slower, because in the end, they end up pretty close quarters, but it's just interesting to see the different approaches.
I've always thought these last 3 corners were really tricky, trying to slow down, brake, and downshift that double right-hander before turn 16 that leads you onto the front straight. It is a really hard corner to maximize, and in some cars, you kind of wash that out a little wider, and some you keep it tighter, and it all depends on the chassis, the downforce level you've got, and the balance of the car. And I think that might be where this race is won tonight.
Well, and the big thing is going into that last part of that, into 16, it does tighten up. It's a little bit decreasing radius. So if you get pinned down to the inside too much, you're going to have to either overslow and run the risk of getting past, or you're going to overshoot and just fly out wide and get past. So it's a very, very tricky place. Ooh, big lunge from Brock here.
Grabs a spot away from.
He sure did.
The 32 is, or rather the 11.
Wow.
Oh, touch there from Skip Brock Jr. to the back of Patry.
Yeah. It's a really, Patry was the one that made that big lunge.
Yes.
And again, smart by Brock, sensing him coming and not trying to cover it too much.
Up onto the back straightaway.
Yeah, and you know what? Forster has made up some of that ground already.
Yeah, he was 1.7 back. Now he's only 1.3 back from Piatek. So that's about 0.3 of a second a lap, and that's what the timing screen shows, a 145 flat to a 145.3. So Forster could certainly close in on this group and then be a thorn in their side as they kind of try to battle amongst themselves. And you always feel safe when you're that far up ahead, but when you bring another soldier into the army at the end of the race, it can really make things interesting.
Exactly, and that was a great shot of what I was just talking about. You've got to have the discipline to open it up a little bit to get really turned in appropriately for turn 16. And of course, what makes you nervous is you do that, somebody can just stuff it up the inside. But if you just have the confidence to stay on that line, either they're going to have to give it up or they're going to wreck you. And that is always the concern you're going to have, of course. But what a great study this is in discipline right now for this group up front.
Here's one thing that Gil doesn't want to see in the mirror, and that's two cars sharing the same livery, nose to tail behind him, teammates between Burkhardt and Patry, and that can prove to be a problem for Gil, who's kind of a one-man show up front by himself.
That's a really, really good point, and you do play the teammate game here whenever you possibly can. And look at the front of Brock's car with that little bit of contact. He's got some damage there. Again, you don't really get up into massive speeds here, so I don't think that's going to create any aero issues for him. Almost looks more like a little scrape than a dent.
Promise it's not helping, but I also don't think it's going to cost him a shot at a win here, especially if these front two or three start throwing hands here towards the end of this race. We're past the halfway point now, and Morgan Burkhardt has been glued to the back bumper of Rowan Gill, and I still think this 40 has a bit more pace than the 174. I also don't know, I guess, if roles were reversed, if Gill could do the same that Burkhardt has done to him.
I think that's a really, really good point here. And of course, Patry then, we've watched him as this race has unfolded, just pick up position after position, just has been pretty relentless and has glommed onto the back of these guys. Brock, a little bit adrift at this stage, then Piatek, and then Forster. Looks like Forster maybe, he's got it down to almost a second and a half, so he's definitely coming as well.
Into turn
Chucking
one.
It down into
man.
one.
they just throw the car down there, Greg. They lean the tires in and just throw it, and it's so violent. It's fascinating to watch. We saw that on board with Burkhardt in the onboard lap at the beginning of the show, how much you're pitching the car around to throw that weight and get it settled before you have to rely on it for the corner.
Well, and some of that is just making sure, we've talked about it before, right? Racing is all about weight transfer, and you want those tires loaded at the absolute right time. And if that means you have to chuck it in there a little bit, sometimes that's what you're going to do. It can take its toll, and if you are a little bit too hot going in, it can create some issues, but sometimes that's just what you've got to do. Riding on board here with Forster, and just gets right up on the tail end, but nowhere to go with it here. And up and through what they call the corkscrew here, and then this long exit, which is essentially turn 9, it just goes on for a while. And once again, we see that little gap through that sequence of corners with Gill and Burkhardt able to just drop Patry a smidge. But then by the time normally they get back to the final sequence of corners here, Patry's right back in the mix.
You're watching the best battle on the racetrack. There are no other ones closer than this, and this one's for the lead. Kurt Schmidt slow on the racetrack right now. See what happened to him. He's actually off right in front of the leaders.
Yeah.
He's running well in the points. 6th coming into the night, but there was a little bit more to this than we even saw. So this is going to hurt him in the standings, but there was a little bit of a gaggle back here. Let's see what happened.
Now here we go to one of those corners, and yeah, little touch right there. Looked like he almost saved it, Kyle.
Yeah, almost had it. And actually, he did keep it straight. I think he comes down here off to turn 14, and just gathering the car up is what cost him so much time, but has some damage to boot.
He's going to duck into the pits, and he sure looked like he could do pretty well rallying, that's for sure. Oh, look at this now. Big move, a look by Burkhardt down to the inside. Does he have the room to make it work down into turn 5? Watch for, here we go. Gill tried the over-under, and Burkhardt exited exactly in the right spot. Absolutely played to perfection by Burkhardt. And now here comes Patry as he's got the run on the inside of Gill as well. And that's what you were talking about, Kyle. The teammates suddenly to the lead.
Wow, in 2 corners, Gill drops 2 spots, and the team, it's like they just said go and just drove right past the 174. Now the ultimate test is, can Gill keep up with these two? How much will that draft, if any, allow him to stick to the 998 or the 40? Now there are some tracks on the calendar, like we've seen, where you can't outrun the draft. Here I think you can. We'll see if Gill can do that. The other thing is now Patry's playing Morgan Burkhardt's rear gunner. That might prevent Gill from making up some time.
And the question is watching Patry, is he going to be going for the lead and thus hanging that car out just a little bit, or is he going to drive sort of within himself a little bit? But it certainly looks to me like he's going after it. And I've watched the back end of that car since he got into second, and he's been letting that thing flow. So he is getting after it here, Caleb Patry is, as we head down into turn 1 with about 7.5 minutes yet to go, looking back at Gill.
And Patry and Burkhardt also worked together last night in the DC Region SCCA Virtual Racing League. And when I say work together, I mean they ran nose to tail. They both ended up getting crash damage from a similar incident. So there are some drawbacks to being right next to your teammate all the time. And it didn't quite work out for them last night. But I can tell you that working with a teammate in any kind of slow car fast strategy is going to be good for you. But Burkhardt's got about a half-second advantage, and that's a much bigger gap than Gill had at any point in this race.
Yeah, it is, and now they're coming up on some traffic as well. And on this track, once again, because of the fact that there's no hard braking into a tight corner, passing's not easy here. You've got to get creative, exactly what Burkhardt did down into turn 5, and just sort of force the issue down in there. It's going to be interesting to see who benefits here when they get to the back of this traffic. And look at that, that Burkhardt opened up that margin, it's gone. I mean, Patry, Gill, Brock, all right there, and Piatek watching, so not too far here.
At 0.3 of a second is the advantage, but it's really just a car length and a half. Well within the margin of error for Burkhardt if he makes the slightest slip. Seeing some drivers use the curb on the uphill there, and some have avoided it. But Burkhardt there stayed off of it. I think lost about a half a tenth. Gains it back here, though, in turn 14. Look at the slide. The rear slipping out from underneath the 40 there. Such a fun, dynamic corner to watch.
And I'm betting, obviously these guys, Sim and all, you are having an absolute blast floating it through that corner for sure. And it's not just a car or two in terms of the traffic they're coming up on, Kyle. It's a pack of traffic. There they are, 4 cars. And this is going to get intriguing. And
they're going to catch them. We still have about 5.5 minutes left to go. That's about 4 laps worth of time. So we're going to catch the traffic. How much will they play ball? How much will they be a rolling chicane for Burkhardt potentially? And Patry and Gill, will they size them up? This could bring in Brock Jr. and Piatek into the mix too. They were just as quick earlier. Maybe they just need a little bit of blocking of the floodgates there to bring everybody back into the mix.
Absolutely. I was just watching the Burkhardt, that line through that uphill corner. He really opened it up a little bit, was running a lot more of a rim shot. And I was watching to see, and it didn't look like it gained him much, but it didn't lose him anything either. So it's just maybe a different preference of how he likes to get through that sequence of corners. Now, once again, into the corkscrew, and this long exit, and then this run down into the quick chicane coming up. And right now, those lead 3 have opened up a little bit of room to Brock, but they're going to have to be dealing with these guys. And these guys are racing hard too. They're going for position as well.
Yeah, this is 18th place. Gianni Morrow, Jason Myers, Max Schweid, and I think the 14 car is Max Bank, and he's a lap down. But everyone's scrapping pretty aggressively and right into the mix. Here comes Morgan Burkhardt to the inside, 3 wide through turn 14.
Nice job by those guys recognizing what's coming and opening the door up just a little bit. So they got 2 of them. A couple of them just ducked into the pit, said, I don't want to be a part of this.
Oh!
But there's still a rub there. That caught 32 Brock. And I think that was Piatek going after Brock, and they touched.
And gets split 3 wide as Forster and Rice-Budo drive right through him. So he's going to lose a couple spots in all of that for Piatek.
Yeah, obviously Piatek thought opportunity here as Brock maybe had to check up. See if we can catch it here.
Let's go back a little further. Little touch.
Oh.
Then watch on exit here, the 4 and the 23 come out of turn 16 with a head of steam and keep their foot in it and split them.
Yep. The slings and arrows of racing fortunes, huh? Meanwhile, up front, this dice continues here, and Burkhardt now has figured out a way through, and Patry and Gill, nobody really lost too much in that exchange of this lead trio. Of course, Brock, Forster, and especially Piatek got hurt in that traffic, but these 3, wow, did Gill get over the first part of the corkscrew with a really, really good run. But then, the problem comes is then you got to get the car turned at the bottom of it, and he was just floating a little bit too much pace.
Carry a lot of speed downhill in an MX-5, Greg. It's the uphill stuff that's hard on it.
Exactly. Yeah, especially when you're carrying, over 500 pounds of weight as compared to normal. You're going to get downhill real well.
Yeah, you heard the engine bog in 4th gear for Rowan Gill as he, you can't downshift out of your rev range, but 5,600 RPM sounds harsh when you're lugging around that much extra weight. But Gill trying to keep up with Patry and Burkhardt here as we come to 2 minutes left. This is going to be 2 laps to go as lap times are about 1:45.7-ish. But that is a full second slower than the fastest laps of this race. So that tells you how much the tires are falling off in their prime condition.
Yeah, they are as Mark or Martin Brundle might say in the F1 coverage, the tires are starting to lose interest completely. And right when you need them most, and there you go, just using that curbing up and over the rise here. And now down into turn 5. What an absolutely great corner. Off camber, downhill, it's all balance as you thread your way into that turn. And the thing is that if you overshoot, there's so much room on the exit, sometimes you just keep it pinned. You can still carry a bit of speed, even if you make a little bit of a mistake there. And look, this is what I'm talking about. Gill gets into there so quick, but then has to check up. In this case, he almost got into the back of Patry.
Got a little bit of a better run leaving the corner, though, this time.
Yeah.
Not enough to really do much with it, but he's close. But Patry...
And part of the problem...
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah, part of the problem there, I would think when you attack that, the first part of that corner like that, you bounce over the curbs. And if the car is still bouncing a little bit, pogoing, when you need to be on the brakes, you can lose a bit of efficacy. So he's got the speed in. He just needs to figure out a way to control the exit a bit.
Coming back to the white flag, he's running out of time to dispatch even Patry. So got to set up a plan here and execute it.
Out of the final turn, turn 17, onto the front straight. Little bit of breathing room for Burkhardt. The battle for second and third is fierce. Then Brock, Forster, and Rice-Budo having a pretty good scrap. A little bit farther back, a little bit of a gap between them, but not too bad here. Actually now it looks like Forster has opened up a decent margin over Rice-Budo. But Gill in attack mode here at Patry, last lap. Here we go, up and over the rise, out of turn 4. Here's the run. Is he just going to throw it into 5? Is Patry going to defend? Let's take a look.
Oh.
He thinks about it. And
He almost hit him, Greg. He was so close.
He did.
You could just feel the NASCAR in him, just want to give him that bump and run, but he didn't do it.
Nope, that was good gentlemanly stuff. So let's see what happens now. as we have watched the speed Gil carries in to the first part of the corkscrew here. Right here. Look at the ground he makes up. Got it slowed down beautifully that time. But the problem is, I think both he and Patry lost a little bit of room to Burkhardt through that sequence.
Yeah, about 6/10 is the difference now, with half a lap to go for Morgan Burkhardt. Didn't get any wins at Sebring. It was all the first couple rounds for the number 40. Was so close at Sebring in the first race of the evening. Race 2 had some issues, dropped back through the pack, and it looks like he might be able to rebound here if he can just get through these last 2 corners and pick up his 5th win of the season.
I'll tell you, one thing that is impressing me about Burkhardt here is with these tires going off, he's still throwing it around, and his car control has been absolutely superb. Here we go, front straight. Burkhardt's going to get it, barring any major problem. Gil takes a look, but not close enough. He will finish second, or Patry will grab second. Gil will finish second to Patry in third. And coming through, Brock grabs the 4th spot. And Jordan Butler doing a nice job. And I tell you, I think Olivier Piatek's going to be a little bit frustrated because he had some speed. Oh, that was the 51 getting a little bit of a nudge. Bleffin and Bankin.
This is all battling for inside the top 15. They still have half a lap left to go. Wayne Buttermore in that multicolor 73. Carson Neal in the kind of camo-colored car there. This is a battle for 14th.
Yeah, it doesn't matter where you look, and that's one of the things we've been absolutely marveling about here is the depth in the pack, and you're still just having an absolute blast running side by side and working each other over here. There, ooh, a little bit off. Couldn't hang on to it, and that's going to be a big hit. Buttermore nosing it into the wall, but boy, he was giving it all on that last lap.
He'll limp that back to 15th place. Caleb Pocock will bring it home in 16th. Well, we've got a moment. Let's go through our race results for our first of 2 races tonight. Morgan Burkhardt, 5th win of the season over teammate Caleb Patry and Rowan Gill, the driver that swept at Sebring, then Skip Brock Jr. and Beans Forster. Greg, this top 5 group, though, I cannot wait for race 2 because we get to do it all over again.
Oh, I know. And I mean, what a battle it's been. And if we don't have that little incident that we had, well, it was a big incident, but that ended up really affecting, the cars back in the 8th, 9th, 10th. That pack could be even more long and in depth here. So yeah, I'm with you. I'm really excited about this second race. Yeah, there was a 11th through 20th right there.
Yeah, there was a lot of DNFs in this race. I think 20th down to 28, all out for crash damage. I think we'll see less of that here in race number 2. We'll go back and look at the incident here in race 1 at the start of this race because we didn't really get a great opportunity to do so. So let's go back and kind of break down the start accident here, Greg. It was a challenging start for a lot of drivers. Let's have a look.
Absolutely. It'll look good here, and you can see the aggression. A lot of cars moving out, looking for some clear space, looking for some position. And that was the first touch right there.
Almost too much to break down. There's just cars everywhere. But
yeah, well, it was the 51 that was Raymond Bleffin, and he gets right there. You see that touch, and then he sends that car going, and then he gets tapped, and that sends him right into the path of the other cars. Ooh, big error there as well.
Oh, the 14, Max Bankin, just gets obliterated and sent into the Armco there. And again, there's that turn across the nose for the 98, and then the 51 tags the 27. And really, I think it all kind of stems from Bleffin here, and then everyone kind of gets collected as he sweeps across the road.
Yeah.
But not much a lot of drivers could do to avoid this.
No.
Look at the 88 carving his way through there, though.
Yeah, a lot of debris flying. Yeah, and some absolutely great driving in terms of picking your way through the mess. It's going to be fun to see it from this onboard here. You can see everything starting up there. It's the 51.
Whew. He's just parted there for the 88. Oh, he got tagged there at the end.
At the end.
Didn't quite get out of it, then just gets hit from okay, well, his luck ran out, but he had it going for a little while. Like he got chased down and cornered after a police chase or something. They kind of wedged him in there at the end.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, man. All right, race 1 complete, Greg, but we get to do it all over again here in just a couple of minutes, about 3 minutes time. A lot of partners and people that make this happen, Greg. 3P Logistic Track Services. Of course, we've already mentioned Full Send Sims as well, and more.
Yeah, Final Turn Motorsports, the full-service prep shop, trackside support, dyno tuning, and you mentioned 3P Logistics, tailored trackside support and race car storage, maintenance, repair, transportation. Full Send Sims, of course. They build custom turnkey racing sims with both real-world racing and simulation training opportunities, and they also bring them trackside, so you can actually at a racetrack hop on the sim, get a little training, bring your coach in. They are set for that. Want to remind everybody, first, second, and third overall in each season will receive trophies. First place in each season will receive a direct drive wheelbase. Second place will receive a set of load cell pedals. And just last weekend, or last Thursday, we announced the award for the third place finisher, and that'll be a choice, either an H-pattern or sequential shifter, or a 2-year iRacing paid subscription. And remember, this is kind of key, folks. All the FSS admins and instructors are eligible for trophies, but not eligible for sim hardware prizes. So drivers who are outside of that top 3, you could still be in there and have a chance of winning some of that sim hardware. And so don't give up on it. Now, since Morgan Burkhart was brought on midseason as an instructor, he'll still be eligible for season 1. But just because you're outside, don't count yourself out. And if you find yourself struggling just a little bit, Full Send Sims is now offering one-on-one instructional sessions. They've included now Morgan Burkhart as an instructor, joining Ben or Beans Forster and Konrad Chachik. And just look on the website at fullsendsims.com. Sign up. You can get some one-on-one training. There's also on Friday, February 10th at 6:30. That's next Friday, or is that tomorrow?
That's
actually?
Tomorrow.
At 6:30 to 8:30 is the next Full Send Sims Racing 101 Drivers School. And in Spec Miata Road, Atlanta, which is the same track that we'll be running on the following week. It's free to all league members, and for those who are off the pace a bit, or are banging out a few too many fenders after a race, or just maybe feel a little uncomfortable, just sign up, take that school, then do a one-on-one and get yourself right up into opportunity to do well. Primary topics tomorrow night will be incident avoidance and racecraft, so certainly worthy to be able to check that out. And as I said, if you can improve yourself a little bit, you might still be in, even if you're out of the top 3, with a shot at some of that hardware. So as Full Send Sim says, just look at the graphic on the upper left, practice makes podium. Don't stop.
Love the idea of using the sim as a training tool for racecraft and things of the sort, Greg. We talked at length about iRacing and the merits it's got. I know that Kenton Cook on the sports car side uses iRacing as a tool to kind of analyze drivers' inputs and things. There are some things that don't carry over, as you know, the seat of the pants feel and things of the sort, but what does carry over is the racetracks, the laser scanned racetracks that give you sight lines and marker points and all those things. The simulation value, I think everyone gets something different out of that, but from learning the racetrack, learning racecraft, learning where to put your car, I think it's a great tool, and it's awesome that Full Send Sims is taking advantage of that.
Oh, I think so too. And the fact that with the Sims, you can be on the other side of the world and have your instructor sitting there, and he can pick different angles and views, really see what you're doing, look at the data. It can be a huge assist. But the cool thing about what Court's doing with Full Send Sims as well is at these racetracks, they bring a rig. It's got 2 sims in it, and you can either have your instructor sitting next to you and racing with you, doing follow and leads or whatever, or he could be standing behind you also on another headset, so he can watch what you're doing and talk to you right over your shoulder. It's an amazing tool, and a lot of racers that have used that have gone out, and the first thing they've recognized on track is faster time. So it is a success, no question about it.
I still think one of the coolest things iRacing could do, and I know they're not necessarily listening to this, but man, wouldn't it be cool if you could join the session as a flagger, pick a corner, and then use your virtual reality headset and one of those fancy motion controllers and wave flags. I think that'd be such a cool thing and really bring that grassroots feel into iRacing. But really cool stuff.
I think that's a fabulous idea.
Oh, man. I mean,
being a flagger, of course, I would love that.
It would be one of my favorite things to do, I bet. Or drive the pace car. Man, that'd be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of pace cars, we're on a pace lap.
We sure are, and we got about 2 miles left of it. Your starting lineup for this race is on the left-hand side of your screen. Burkhart, Patry, Gill, and Brock make up your front 2 rows. This is the finishing order from race 1. That's your starting lineup here for race 2.
I'm going to be keeping my eye on Piatek. I think he's going to have a bit of the red mist in that white number 11. And if he's got that red mist focused, well, he had speed. It'll be fun to see what happens here, working his way up through the pack. He was showing me some stuff in that one. And we'll see what happens here. And of course, Rice Budo, Butler, they all would like to be a little bit farther up into the scrap here. And I think they're going to have an opportunity.
I think they will as well. Cars are rolling now to the last, I should say down into the corkscrew area here following the pace car here. Quick look at the weather. When we started race 1, we were about 97-degree track temp. That's come down about 10 degrees. That's only going to help. The air temp, though, has actually picked up a degree from earlier in the day.
So, yeah, a little bit of a cloud cover now, cooling that track just a little bit in spots. Looks like it's kind of hazy cloud at this point, so that always makes a difference. And the real thing here is obviously you want to make up some positions here, but get through this first sequence of corners at the start before you start really attacking here, because last thing we want is to have 8 cars involved in something again up near the front. Let's get through that, and then let's see who can really do some battling here. Look at Burkhardt working hard to get those tires scrubbed nice and clean.
What's that old adage, Greg, about to finish first, you must first finish?
Yeah, and you can't win the race on the first lap, but you sure can lose it. So you pocket those two things and apply a little bit of logic, and we'll see how that plays out here. The teammates front row sweep as they come out with Gil and Brock right with them here, heading down into turn 1 as we are ready to go racing here at Barber. We're green, and this time Burkhardt, much better start than he had in the first one. He already slips over in front of Patry and turns into the corner, and Gil, though, able to slide through. Back in the pack, everybody looks like they're being a little bit more circumspect this time. Well done.
There we go, through turn 2 and now heading into turn 3. Looking good now. Wow, the 174 gets kind of tucked in there behind Caleb Patry. Beans Forster and Skip Brock Jr. battle on the run to turn 5. Gil tucks in behind Patry. I thought he'd look for a move here, Greg, but he's going to play ball here early.
I did too, and Forster ran really nice and wide through the exit of turn 4 and carried some speed and was able to move up a spot here and sneak around Brock. And then as it got down into turn 5, looked like Rice Budo might be able to do something, but he had to tuck back in as well. Look at this, 3 abreast, there's a touch back in the back. Buttermore there in that blue, pink, and green machine involved in it again, but it didn't look like that was on him. Looked like somebody moved into him just a little bit.
And into the corkscrew for the first time. Carlos Mendana a little slow at the exit of the corkscrew, but otherwise everyone's still driving straight. That's great to see midway through lap 1. Burkhardt and Patry, the teammates, lead again. Rowan Gill, Beans Forster, Skip Brock Jr., the rest of the top 5. And behind them, Brennan Horn in the number 45. Haven't really talked a lot about him tonight. And he's tucked in behind Jordan Butler, just ahead of Christian Rice Budo, another driver that we haven't talked about a lot tonight. And there's a big crash in the background.
Yeah, I can hear the tires going, and that's the number 24, one of the drivers involved. And it's still happening, isn't it?
It is. There's Brian Horowitz, Jason Myers in it. And let's see
Gianni
if we can,
Morrow was the 24 that was involved.
Let's see if we can go back and pick it out. Okay, the 117 to Carson Neal is one of the first cars I see turned around. Let's see if we can pick it up from here. Right there. Just kind of crowds somebody there, and then the 88 gets tagged, and again, everyone's still close and can't quite get woed up in time.
Yeah, and that's that race, that racecraft, and more importantly, the track awareness. You can't just assume the guy you've passed him and just move over into that lane. You've got to make sure, you've got to check before you do that. And he obviously didn't, and ended up costing him and some others fairly dearly here as we go back up to the front, and this group of 3 opening it up a little bit. And look at this again, Forster and Brock side by side battling here. Forster's got the inside line, but he had to pinch the entrance, able to get it through that corner just a little bit. Looks like Piatek snuck around on Rice Budo as well.
Yeah, he had a real aggressive jump over the curbs Kind of got all 4 tires in the air there for a second. Nicholas Rice-Buto's a driver that hasn't really run as close to the front as I would have expected based on his prior results here this season. So we'll see if he can get up into the top 5, but only 6th in race 1 and 7th right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, he's right at the sharp end of things. You talked about it. He's well placed in the points, and you would have thought that he would have been a little bit more up at the sharp end of things here. Look at those different line choices we've been talking about through this last sequence of corners. And sometimes you swing that big outside line, and if you got the car to stick, when the guy in front of you swings right to set up for that final left, if you really got a head of steam built up, you can just stuff it down the inside. Nobody was willing to try it there, and you do need the driver you're overtaking, of course, to be savvy enough to recognize you're coming and not turn in on you.
About a 7-car breakaway. Rice-Buto is the last of that group. It's 1.5 seconds back to Deacon Greenfield. Then we have to look back to Levi Knupp and Max Schweid. This is a battle for 13th place. And it looks like the 98 is going to go down the inside of turn 2 and complete the pass here on Levi Knupp.
Yeah, that's some serious close quarters racing. And again, you can see those different approaches. And some of it is you start to feel, you know, the front end binding up a little bit, and you start to scrub speed. And again, these are momentum cars. And when you feel that front end binding up, sometimes when you've got room, you just need to open the wheel up just a little bit, which is exactly what I think Schweid did. And it just allowed him to carry a little bit more momentum. If you keep that front end bound up, 1, you're scrubbing speed, 2, you're just torturing that outside tire.
They continue battling into the corkscrew. Big curb jump there. And they're about 7 seconds behind Christian Rice-Buto, so that battle, I think, is out the window for this race. But they have a couple drivers behind them looking for some recovery after race 1. Caleb Pocock is one of those drivers in that number 6. I think he was the driver, correct me if I'm wrong, Greg, that was the one that kind of got shuffled off there in that incident?
Yes. Yes, he was, exactly. So he definitely wants to be able to get back into it here.
Whoa, look out, Knupp's off track.
He's got an opportunity here.
And through he goes.
Nice job there by Knupp, realizing he'd lost that momentum and not just turning right back in front of people. That was a nice piece of driving. That's Tamayo right there, swinging way wide. Enrique.
And chasing.
Trying to get a run on the 14 here.
That's Max Bankin, whose race ended really early in race 1. Little bump draft down the front straightaway. 3P Logistics paint on this number 10.
Absolutely, as they fall down into turn 1 and then immediately climb up into turn 2. Like I said, it's only 80 feet of elevation change here, but it comes at you abruptly when you get to it.
Rice-Buto and Piatek trading spots again. Move the 4 back to 6th.
What a scrap. Problem is that battling is causing them to lose touch just a little bit with that group of 5 up front.
Yeah, they have lost some ground here. Oh, Court Schmidt in turn 5. Put a bumper cars back here as they get back online. What happened to the 172? Got in there a little hot.
Yeah.
And everyone kind of skidded around him. So back
that's
up.
That's a tough call because he was pretty much alongside there.
Yeah, I think it might have been one of those scenarios where you just get a little bit too deep past your braking point, and you would have made the corner if there wasn't a car out there, but just a little bit of a coming together, but they'll both drive away from it, which is the good news.
That's one of the things in racing, and frequently you have a coming together moment on the track, you have a coming to Jesus moment with the officials.
Yes. Rowan Gill, I'm sure, would like to get back on top of this timing tower, but he has been unable to dispatch either Patry or Burkhardt since losing that lead. And remember how much pressure Burkhardt was putting on Gill that entire first race. He was right to the rear bumper, and Gill has just not been able to match that level of pressure. And it doesn't take a lot. It's not like they're 0.4 a lap different. It's hundreds, but that's making a difference, and Gill is having trouble putting the pressure back on.
Well, and what hurt him there a little bit was Patry. The back end floated on him just a little bit going through 1, 2, and 3. and it just cost him a little bit of momentum, and as a result, Gill had to check up just a little bit. Here we go again. Forster and Brock having their side-by-side duel, and it's Brock sneaking through this time and picking up that 4th spot again.
Nicholas Rice-Budo is right behind him as well and hungry for more positions after a 6th place result in race 1, so I'm sure he will get to the back of Forster and have something to say about a top 5 potentially.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, a guy that's really looking good in this race is Greenfield. Sitting there in 8th at number 22. He is closing in on the back of Piatek right now. He's made up a 2nd in the last couple of laps. So he's starting to show some pace here.
Yeah, top 10 in race 1 as well. So this will be a good points day for Greenfield. Has some rear end damage to that car, but thankfully that's not the wind facing side of the MX-5, so he'll be okay with that damage.
Yeah, and it just gave him a little bit more aero in the back too.
Yeah, end up a manual spoiler. You just
exactly.
you adjust that with a rubber mallet.
Yeah, exactly. After the race.
Yeah.
That is what's called the result of a chrome horn right there. So, but look at this. I mean, as quick as that margin opened up for Burkhardt because of that little bobble by Patry, it's just evaporated once again. And Patry that time actually got a huge run up and out of turn 4.
I think Gill's best opportunity is if Patry races Burkhardt. If they stay nose to tail and just work together this entire race, Gill's going to have a pretty hard time making a move on anybody. But the second Patry opens that door, I expect Gill will be slamming down through it to try to, join Burkhardt up there at the front. We'll see how it works, though. Look at this battle, Forster and Rice-Budo. Spudo in the 4, right behind Beans Forster here into the corkscrew.
Absolutely, with Piatek right on their 6 as they come down and through. There he is, the number 11, really, really close. And you can see behind them, Greenfield now has got that deficit behind Piatek really down to under a 2nd now. So he is glomming onto this group. And, getting back to what you were talking about with the teammates up front, just because you're teammates doesn't mean you're not going to race and race hard. You're going to do everything you can to race clean. But that doesn't mean that at some point you're not going to stick the nose in and try and get through, and that can slow you both up a little bit. And so, Gill's got to be hopeful of that. Boy, I'll tell you what, right there, Patry really had a much better run through turns 15 and 16, made up a ton of ground on Burkhardt.
Having a teammate in a Spec Miata race, it's great for communication, and it's great for when you need someone to cut you a break. But they're not going to just sit behind you the entire race. I fully expect if Patry has the capability, he's going to try to pass Morgan Burkhardt here. But if, like the circumstance we saw earlier in the night with Gill getting past, Morgan Burkhardt and Caleb Patry probably talking to each other right now, Greg. So if one driver is going to make a move, they both know it and expect it, and that makes a big difference in how they're able to race against those that are not hearing every move that's being planned.
That's a really good point. If you could hear Burkhardt saying, I just bobbled there. If you got to run, go through, I'll let you through. I'm going to shut the door behind you. That kind of thing. That's a really good point. And Gill right now trying to do it all on his lonesome. These guys now have checked out by about 3 seconds back to that huge battle for 4th in the last couple of spots in the top 5 with Brock, Forster, Rice-Budo, Piatek, and Greenfield right in the mix as well. And, we've been talking about these curbs here because this was originally designed as a motorcycle racing track, which normally means not only are the curbs smooth and you don't get that gatoring effect, if you will, but also they're generally pretty low. But this place, those curbs are plenty stout. They may not have the choppiness to them, but they're pretty tall. Oh, that was awfully close. And it definitely caught Pocock out just a little bit. He did a beautiful job there, Kyle, of avoiding that contact.
And did a great job and gets back rolling. There's a couple spots down. Going back to the curbing, though, Greg, if you drive up onto it progressively like the 51 just did, little contact there with Butler, you drive up onto it progressively, it's not a huge shock. But what we're seeing in a couple of the corners is when you're really shortcutting, you're basically ramping the entire width of the curb. And you're approaching it almost perpendicular. And when you do that, yeah, the backside of the curb is pretty high off the ground. So they are still pretty stout obstacles if you are approaching them with the vigor that all these drivers are. If you approach them more, parallel to them and kind of ramp up the side of them slowly, it's not such a big deal. But they are certainly still a shock to the suspension in anger here.
Absolutely. And Gill right now, that last lap, he was about 4/10 off of Burkhardt's time and about 3/10 off of Patry. And you can see where that margin suddenly appeared. He started to come up, and here we go. Down to the inside. That's Piatek, and gets into the side of the 4, Rice Pudo. Rice Pudo goes around, gets it going again in a big hurry, but has lost a lot of track distance here. Piatek that's down to turn 5. It's a great overtaking area.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he had enough space there, Greg, looking back at this.
I don't know, yeah.
I mean, let's go back and have a look. I mean, he was, here's the move into the braking zone. I mean, is he fully alongside? Maybe that's the question mark here, but now he's there, but
yep.
Does he have space there at the apex? That's tough. That's that's one of those situations,
that's a tough
Greg.
Call, yeah.
I mean, was he there alongside in the braking zone? Not really. But did he have space at the apex also? No. So we'll see how that one gets ruled.
Oh, and look at this now. Right after we saw Gill lose all that ground to this duo up front, Patry has dropped off just a little bit from Burkhardt. Gill is all over him again. That's one of those things where the gap between Burkhardt and Gill didn't change. It's just Patry in the middle of them slipped back just a little bit.
He had a run, Greg, coming out of turn 16 and kind of bounced off the rev limiter, and it killed the run that he had. And I think it was because he had the rear wheels in the air, and when he hit the ground, it kind of spun the wheels up, and he knocked against the rev limiter, and that cost him just a little bit of time. But he's a little quicker than Patry right now. I think if he could get by him, he might be able to run Burkhardt down. But Patry's playing a great rear gunner here to Morgan Burkhardt.
He is, and if you just saw Patry now in that run through 2-3, got that one curve pretty good, unsettled the car, and he had to make a little bit of a correction to save it. And otherwise he may have been right up on the back of Burkhardt at that point. And that's something you've got to be mindful of when you clout these curbs. They will unsettle the car just a little bit, and you don't want to be too aggressive on them, or this is what can happen. And right now on board with Beans, and he is under attack now from Piatek. That would be for 5th.
Those two battle, and Piatek keeps the pressure on, and here's Rice Pudo on a recovery drive past Brennan Horn in the 45, back up to 8th place after getting looped around at turn 5 a lap ago.
Yeah, you got to believe that Rice Pudo is going to be fuming inside that helmet right now, even as close a call as it was. Usually when you're the guy on the outside and you feel that you got hit, you're always feeling aggrieved. You may change your position afterwards, but right now he's going to be driving with some serious red mist at this stage. Meanwhile, up front, these three just continue this duel. We're under 10 minutes to go.
Well past halfway at this stage, and Burkhardt's last lap. Let's see what it is this time across the board. We'll compare across the top 3. Burkhardt at a 45.031, Patry at a 44.860, and Gill at a 45.084. So actually Patry was the quickest of the 3 that time, but it was only by 0.2 of a second.
And that's what I'm talking about. I'm not sure in the last few laps that the gap between Burkhardt and Gill has changed all that much. It's a whole different thing for Patry. And look at this, Brock under attack here. Forster went down the inside. Brock trying to do the rim shot and carry the momentum. We'll see if he's going to be able to make that work. Piatek just sitting back and watching. Brock down to the inside.
Ooh, that was a dive.
And Piatek gets into the back. That time of Brock, that's going to be frustrating.
Yeah, that was a little bit of a late dive for me there, Greg, but
yeah, I agree.
That was one of those moments. So you see the door open and you just dive for it, but
that was Forster he got into the back of.
Right.
Yeah, because he and Brock had been fighting already. So, Piatek a little aggressive down into 5, isn't he?
Yeah, it's one of your best passing opportunities. So if you feel like you've gotten stuck, that's where you're going to get desperate, and that's where you're going to make your dives, as we've seen it happen a couple times tonight. But where else would you be able to do it, really? I mean, turn 1 maybe, but even that's a high-speed, high-commitment corner that's challenging to get it done.
Yep, and now he's got a mirror full of Greenfield, Piatek does.
He's up to P6 after starting 9th, so +3. And for the lead, here comes Patry to the inside of Burkhardt, and Gill to 2nd.
Oh, there's a little touch there, I think. And that has got really forced.
Oh, they touch again.
Another touch again, and Gill able to hang on to it, but Burkhardt has the nose on the inside. Does he have enough overlap going down into turn 1? This is going to be a brutally difficult corner for both of them. Gill giving him a little room.
Oh, the
runs
leader.
wide. Oh, Patrick's off. Big contact.
Oh man, Caleb Patry got the lead and then stuffed it in the fence. Gill gets promoted to the lead.
Holy cow. What a change of event here.
That car is destroyed.
Yeah, he just absolutely walloped that barrier. What a turn of events here.
Yeah, we'll go back and look at not only the accident here, but what started all this. But watch the 998 on corner exit here. Just gets wide, touches the grass, and into the wall.
Yep. You're so loaded, you're falling down and away there, but here was the other part of it.
Morgan,
Burkhardt
is he
really
track out
clobbered that
right here?
Right there.
They're both off, actually.
Yeah.
That's what opened the door for Gill, and then Gill right here makes a little bit of contact with Burkhardt at the apex.
And then right here they get it again, don't they?
Yep.
Yes, yep. Wow.
All that said, back live.
And you know, that's exactly what I was talking about, Kyle, because Burkhardt, I'm convinced, went off there because he really clouded that curb and unsettled the car, scooted the car maybe even 6 inches too far to the side, and that was off track.
You saw Gill just do the same thing there, just not quite as badly. Dropped a tire in the grass, and you can get away with it if you get the car unloaded before you get to the grass. But as we saw for Patry out of turn 1, if you still got the car loaded, it is a very quick way to turn an MX-5 into a hunk of scrap metal.
Yeah, absolutely. Fascinating there, watching from on board with Burkhardt, watching Gill use the brakes, just tapping them to keep that nose pinned so he didn't pick up a big push through that 15 and 16 complex.
And a little tap mid-corner there at turn 2 for Gill just to rotate the car around, put some more weight on the nose. Burkhardt has got a fantastic run here. Is he going to do something with it? Gill, he's going to leave him the space here. I thought he'd go defensive, but he didn't.
Yeah, that surprises me. So now it's an out-braking duel, and you know that Burkhardt is going to put that car right where Gill wanted to make any kind of a counterpunch move. That surprised me. I really thought Gill would have faded left just a little bit.
Does he have something to say in response here? Here's a look down into the corkscrew, Greg, side by side.
Oh, remember the first race, he's been really quick through here. Maybe his thought there was try and get Burkhardt offline just a little bit, and Burkhardt didn't take the bait.
It hurt Gill a lot more than it hurt Burkhardt there. It was a great thought. It just didn't execute, I think, the way that he thought it would. Here's Rice Sputo and Brennan Horn. These two still battling for 7th, but Horn has not let the 4 get away.
No, Horn's having a really good race here. Up in front of them. Here we go. Got a little bit of a run, but again, just not a lot you can do with it here.
And another battle on the racetrack. How about this one? Rich Green in the 28 and Court Schmidt in the 172. Down the inside, really shallow entry there for Court, but gets the job done.
Yeah, he really got on the brakes hard, but he had the car perfectly placed for it and didn't overshoot. Yeah. Nice job there in the Full Send Sims machine. And yes, we are blatantly always going to pump Full Send Sims a little bit. Because we're not here, none of us are here without the vision of Court and Full Send Sims. And glad he's able to climb behind the wheel of one of those remarkable Sims himself and have some fun here.
I'm just glad that he gets to race also, Greg, after helping organize this event. There's a lot of league organizers and event organizers that don't get the chance to get behind the wheel in their own leagues. And you know what else is great is you get to see it from the perspective of a driver and carry the same feedback on improving it or changing it for the future as well. You get the same experience as your competitors do, which I think is important.
I do too. And I mean, and you know, think about it, it also gives him a real world feel for what can we do to make this sim better, you know. So that's, you know, that's part of the game here for sure. As we're on board with Gill once again here, and he's running out of time. We're under 3 minutes.
Coming back to 2 laps to go, next time by the stripe. And he continues to gain a lot of time on the entrance to the corkscrew. And he's not giving a lot of it back, but he's giving some of it back. So he gains 3 steps and loses 2 on corner exit.
Yeah, and I think it's just he straight lines and uses that curb so much that the car really unsettles just a little bit, and it just takes him that instant to wait for that car to settle before he can tap the brake to pin the nose a little bit.
Burkhardt washing out a little wider here. And Rowan actually closed in a touch.
Yeah.
Shallower entry for 16, climbs the curb. Burkhardt does not. Fascinating to watch how different, you've said this a couple times tonight, how different they're taking these corners. Every lap, they're trying something different.
Absolutely they are. In that last lap, they were just pounding the curb, so you know the gloves are off at this stage. Floating it up through turn 2. Little drop through 3. Now the rise up and over at the exit of 4.
Lap traffic on the horizon as well. Alfie Zidane in the 13.
Let's see if he just opens the door for him. Nope. But they weren't really close enough to be held up at all here. Let's see what happens now. This is going to be really treacherous here coming up into the corkscrew.
All Gill needs is for Burkhardt to get held up a tenth or two. And that's not a lot. Just a little bit of a minor miscommunication with a lap car, and all of a sudden Gill's right back in this. Right here. Here it is.
Had to really check up, but so did Gill, unfortunately for him. And now Burkhardt trying to figure out, do I go inside, do I go outside? And Gill just trying to read the scenario here. Whew.
Lap car moves, and so Gill actually kind of netted nothing out of that. Maybe a half a tenth, if anything. But he just, it wasn't in an area that he could take advantage of it, like coming onto a straightaway. It was going into a corner. Wow, big clobber for Burkhardt, leaves sparks and a cloud of smoke behind him. He ground the frame of the car on the curb that time.
Yeah, they are just clocking these curbs right now. And I was watching Gill as he was turning into that right behind him.
Watch this. Man, they just absolutely drilled it.
Yeah. And Gill really got his car rotated nicely turning into that, so you might have just a little bit more grip.
White flag in the air. Last lap around Barber, Greg. Can Gill get back to him?
Boy, I'll tell you what, shades of race 1 at Sebring. These two out by themselves, mano a mano. And here we go. A little bit more traffic up front.
Big understeer for Gill that time. Could not get the rotation he needed and back to throttle quick enough. Lost a tenth of a second through there.
That's going to hurt here into this is the best overtaking area, and he's too far back to do anything here.
Closes.
You don't want to, yeah, he does. You don't want to overcharge it and end up with a big push and lose your head of steam, and he didn't. What he made up, he's kept. But it's a lot tougher to make passes now in this section of track, and he's going to need to rely maybe on a little bit of traffic through here.
There's his big gain down the hill. The traffic is off course, so it'll be clear track back to the checkers now for the leaders. I think there's one car left, but it might be far enough up the road that it won't be a concern for Morgan Burkhardt, who's trying to sweep this round as he did the first two and as Gill did at Sebring.
And you notice Burkhardt was really staying within himself through that corkscrew section. He kept that car off of the outside edge of the curbs. Both of them getting their cars rotated beautifully into 12-13. Here we go. Last sequence of corners. It's either going to be a mistake by Burkhardt or a win by Burkhardt. Burkhardt did float out just a little bit, and that has given Gill a little bit of a run. Here's where I thought, stuffing down the inside, but he knew he didn't have enough of that drive, and he tucks back in, and Burkhardt has enough of a nose ahead, and as you said, Kyle, Burkhardt sweeps here at Barber. Gill second. Coming to the line is Brock. And then is it going to be Piatek? He does. What a comeback drive for Olivier.
Yeah, P4, Deacon Greenfield, the top 5 after starting in 9th. Great run for him. Beans Forster, P6th, then Rice Sputo in 7th. That's going to be a frustrating result for him. He was up the road a little further than that. Brennan Horn, 8th. Raymond Blethen and Jordan Butler, the rest of your top 10. Now,
Rice Sputo his fast lap was right in the hunt, so that'll bother him a bit. As we've still got battling going on. This is for the 14th spot. Max Bankin has it. He is looking at Pocock up front. That beautifully livered car. Ooh, somebody's off there.
That's Levi Knupp, just shy of the checkered flag, so he's going to lose a couple spots. And I wanted to look at, now this first, but Bankin had an issue on the final lap. We'll go back and look at it. Here's Knupp all by himself. And I'm willing to bet before we even see this that it's the grass on the corner exit here. Right there.
Yep. Man. That's a hit.
It was. And Bankin, again, as I mentioned, I saw him slow earlier in the lap. Don't remember exactly where he was on track, but we'll try to find it. See if I can fast forward through it and see where he came to a stop. Maybe it was a lap prior, but either way, nope. Okay, well, I give up. Thought he had some issue, but he came home P13 in the number 14 car. Greg, let's have a look at our race results.
Let's do that.
Let's start with page 1. There we go.
All right, Morgan Burkhardt over Rowan Gill. And I think Rowan Gill may have blown his car up on the cool-down lap. Skip Brock Jr. Third. Fourth, Olivier Patek, a nice comeback drive. Deacon Greenfield, as you said, ninth. Up into the top 5. Then Beans Forster, Nicholas Rice-Puto, I agree. I think he's going to be a little frustrated. And then Horn, Blethyn, and Butler rounding out your top 10.
11 through 20, Max Schwein to the 98, Caleb Pocock, Bankin, and Buttermore. Then Rich Green wrapping up your top 15. Court Schmidt, P16 tonight in race 2. He'll lose a little bit in the way of points this evening, but race 2, a little bit of a pickup from race 1. Levi Knupp, 17th with that crash on the front straightaway right there at the end. And then for the rest of the order here, Greg, some issues just like race 1, some incidents, and then that list of drivers out from that major collision on the back straightaway.
Yeah, and that one was a biggie, and it's a shame because, particularly, Caleb Patry late in the going, having that off right after he was able to take the lead and just overshot turn 1 a little bit, and that's all it took. And that's what you pointed it out early, that even with those little bits of grass verge, even if there's runoff behind it, you catch that grass, that snaps the car around, and off you go. And there's a look at some of the sculptures that they have around this track.
Yeah, creepy crawly for me, Greg, but they're cool looking.
Yeah, absolutely they are. Yeah, down at turn 5, there's that big spider down there, and they call that Charlotte's Web as a result.
Well, one of the drivers we got waiting for us to chat with is Caleb Patry, who had a real good run in race 1, second place for him, but race number 2, Caleb, things did not go to plan. Got the lead, then it all went wrong. Take us through it.
Yeah, I just kind of was following Morgan there that's a majority of that race. Just thought he and I could kind of pull away, and yeah, it was going that way, and then he went wide with a couple turns left, and I snuck underneath, and then I don't know, going through one for whatever reason multiple times throughout that race, the thing just didn't want to rotate and just wanted to push to the outside. And I mean, I thought it turned in when I normally do, and I thought it was going slow enough, but yeah, just went a little bit wide and clipped the grass and just shot me to the inside wall. So that sucks, but whatever. It was a good run.
And look, when you as you were turning into one, that the car rotated really well, but then you may have carried just a little bit of a slide that is what maybe snuck it out on you there. We had been speculating, and you missed the apex just a smidge. We're watching a replay right there, and that's just enough, and that's exactly what you're talking about. You did answer a question of ours, though, because we were going, all right, these guys are teammates. Is Mr. Patry just going to be the rear gunner there, or if opportunity presents, is he going for it? Man, you went for it.
Yeah, I mean, there's really no point in going for it when you got, 20 minutes left, and
exactly.
Yeah, and you're still trying to work your way ahead of the rest of the field. But no, I mean, the plan was to, if it was just kind of us three at the end there, I would have tried to make something happen those last few laps. But unfortunately, it just didn't go my way. That's what happens.
I'll tell you what, you had a great run in the first race, and I mean, up until that moment, it's a superb run in race 2. Absolutely great evening of racing here, and love calling you as you're hustling that Miata around, man. Nice job.
Yeah, thank you. Race 1 went pretty well, and was hoping to continue in race 2. But overall, good night. I'm happy with it.
Good. You like Road Atlanta coming up?
Oh, I love Road Atlanta.
All right, we love to hear that.
Can't
Should
wait.
be fun.
Thanks, Caleb.
Oh yeah, for sure.
We'll see you next week.
Thanks,
Mission
guys.
Raceway Road Atlanta. We'll see you there.
You bet.
Sounds good.
Morgan Burkhardt sweeps round number 4 as he did rounds 1 and 2. 5th and 6th wins of the season, Morgan. Race 1, got the lead away from Rowan Gill, went on and won, but race 2, things got a little spicy up front there. Out of turn 13, I believe, got a little sideways into the grass. Traded spots there with Rowan Gill, and then your teammate took the lead away from both you guys. Had an incident at the exit at turn 1. You went on to win the race. Take us through both your races, but race 2 in that battle especially.
Well, for sure, it was more difficult in race 2, just because it was a lot closer, and I was the one setting the pace, so it's more difficult to pace yourself and make a mental effort to keep the tires under you and just keep it on the track. So you have to be so precise with the trail braking to get the nose to bite so that you can actually go through the corners and not drop a tire. Because I'm almost positive, watching what Caleb did, that we did the same kind of thing, just he did it in a place where it would bite a lot harder. And it's basically you get into the corner and you have to weight the nose with a little bit of dab of the brakes, and it's just not enough that the front end kind of just slides right off, and you drop a tire, gets unloaded, and it gets all wiggly wobbly and goes all over the place. But yeah, race 1 was kind of the opposite mentality. It was just trying to pressure Rowan, see if we could get a gap, which didn't really end up happening. So about 10 minutes to go, I was like, I should probably start to see where I can pass him. I knew where I had a better run on him, so I could use that to my advantage. But yeah, it was 2 completely different races.
They certainly presented that way, and both of them just immensely exciting, to be sure. Were you surprised in this second race that when your teammate got to the lead and Gil was able to sneak through on you, that exiting 4 on that run down into 5, that he didn't fade left a little bit? He left you an awful lot of room.
I was a little bit surprised, yeah. I thought he would have defended a little bit more, but at that point there were like 5 or 6 minutes left in the race, and it's a track where you can kind of take advantage of somebody who's just passed, because they usually get a really horrible run out of that corner because of the way that the corners are shaped. So I knew that once I got around him, I had a decent chance of being able to get a decent gap and have a little bit of breathing room, and that's kind of what I lucked into having with a little bit of traffic. But yeah, it was difficult because you had to plan it right.
Right. And the other question I was going to ask was, near the end of the second race in particular, it really looked like your car was starting to slide around a lot, and your car control was just remarkable out there. Also saw you really pounding some curbs.
Yeah. I found that in some of the corners, like the corner that we just watched right now, it helps a lot with the rotation. So if you can kind of get the car to compress and just flatten on top of the curb, you end up getting just a ton of rotation out of it, and you don't have to use as much tire and steering to do it for you. But I'm gonna mark up the car control skills to learning how to drive on a sealed concrete track. So it's kind of second nature to drive the car sideways.
I'll tell you what, it's always a learning experience every time somebody gets behind the wheel, whether it's a sim or a car in real life. It's just a joy to watch you run, man. Thanks again for just a marvelous weekend, or a marvelous Thursday.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Morgan. We'll see you next week.
See ya.
All right, Greg, looks like Rowan, we don't have a hold of him right now. He's chatting with the stewards after this one, so we will talk with him next week. But we've got Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta coming up next week, Greg. It is one of my favorite racetracks in the country. It's got excellent flow. It's got a heavy braking zone. It's just a blast. I can't wait to go there next week.
Yeah, in a way, it's this track, as you said, with a couple of heavy braking zones, but it's this track on steroids. Smooth, but mega fast, mega consequence. And like this, you're rarely in a straight line very long on that track. And so, drafting, finding a way through sometimes can be a bit of a challenge. But that track is so quick that I would think the draft, especially from 7 down into turn 10A, 10B, is going to be monumental. And, of course, the run through the S's. And my favorite corner on that whole track, believe it or not, turn 1 and 3. Just love those corners. I can't wait to watch these guys run there.
Well, before we step away, we're almost out of time. We do have Skip Brock Jr. joining us here, though, in P3 in race 2. Greg, take it away. Skip Brock Jr. in the 32.
Yeah, it was that second race went great for me. The first race, I owed some apologies to people. I was a maniac. I went into turn 5, didn't see my braking point, and just almost took out Morgan and Jordan. And so, yeah, it was race 1 was a mess. I felt like I did pretty well in race 2, had some great racing with Beans. Unfortunately, we lost the leaders, but I don't think I had the pace to keep up with those guys anyway.
Yeah, that move down in turn 5, we saw it, and we both thought, wow, was that mega aggressive? And now you explained it, because you're not prone to that kind of just a red miss move. But you've certainly rebounded in race 2. I was going to ask you, when you mentioned we didn't think you necessarily had that pace. You just then get involved in the race you're in, right? And if the race in front comes back to you, but you don't quit.
Yeah, I mean, I try to be smart and not race people I don't need to race, if I've got the pace to catch up with people. But, Beans and he was in front of me, and we were kind of starting to lose that front pack, and I just said, all right, now he's my race, and I've got people behind me to worry about. So it's all about position at that point for me. I just want the position, and he defended like crazy, too, because I think he was thinking the exact same thing. I mean, we don't want to have to fight the guys behind us.
That makes absolutely perfect sense, and the result, the podium, well done.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it helps that I don't know what happened to Caleb up there, but I definitely didn't have third place pace, but I do think I had fourth place pace. I think I kind of ended up around where I belong. But yeah, with the draft, I could keep up with them, but without it, I didn't have it.
Gotcha. Well, you know what? If something happens to somebody up in front of you, and you keep it on the track, you earn that position. Don't give that a second thought.
Yeah.
Great run, man.
Absolutely. And this is my home track, and I love this track so much. Never get tired of running it. And next week, Road Atlanta, everyone loves that track. That's kind of also a home track for me. I live in Birmingham, so I go there 3 times a year maybe. So I'm really excited. I hope I have some good pace there too.
Like I said, Road Atlanta in a way, because it's smooth, it's undulating, but it's like this place on steroids, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, in real life, it's really, it is like on steroids, because there's concrete everywhere you can hit. I've been in the wall in 5, been in the wall in 1. So it's a scary track, but in the sim, you can kind of send it, especially in turn 1. It's fun. You just send it in there and hope it hangs on. It's great.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a phenomenal place. Can't wait to call you guys racing there, and it sounds like you can't wait to race there. Thanks, man.
Yep, excited. Thank you.
Thanks, Skip. And real quick, Greg, we also have Rowan Gill. Rowan joins us, P2 tonight in both races, P3 in race 1, P2 in race 2. Rowan, real close tonight, but couldn't quite get around Morgan there at the end. Take us through your races this evening.
Yeah, I just kind of lacked a little bit of pace tonight. I didn't get enough prep. I've been prepping for the Bathurst 12-hour, which is in a few days. I'm going to be on the big broadcast, so I didn't get enough prep, and that just really hurt me, and kind of cost me the win in both races.
For anybody who's just watching this for the first time, and you're thinking, okay, sim racing, real racing, you do have to prep for these races, because these sims are so realistic that you've got to get that bit of track time, don't you?
Yeah, definitely. Just doing hundreds of laps, obviously, like for the Bathurst, like we've been just doing hundreds of laps, just trying to, get those last 2 or 3 tenths. And, it's the same thing here, just trying to find that extra little bit so you can be able to pull off the win. But yeah, that just is what cost me today. And, we're going to Road Atlanta next week, and I'm really, really good at that track. I really like that track, so hopefully, I can pull off the little win again.
Yeah, that is a special place. I do have to ask you, man, after the change of position and when you found yourself in the lead coming out of turn 4 in that second race, I was surprised you didn't fade left a little bit more and maybe try and make it a bit more difficult for Morgan to be able to sneak by you. What was your thought process going through that?
Yeah, I just tried to, save my stuff right to the end, and I tried to over-under him. I tried to get him back in the next corner, but it just didn't really work out. And then after that, he kind of just pulled a tiny little gap, and I just couldn't really come back for it.
Makes sense. Well, I'll tell you what, after hearing your effusiveness about Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta, can't wait to see what you're going to do there next Thursday for us, man. Looking forward to it. Halfway through the season, glad you were able to join us.
Yeah, this series is really well run. I love doing these races. It's so much fun.
We love calling you, man. good luck, and good luck at Bathurst.
Thank you.
Thanks, Roan. We'll see you next week at Road Atlanta. Greg, wrapping things up here from Barber Motorsports Park. We were touching on Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta, but what a fun race this was. Fun night of racing here at Barber. Next week, though, one of my all-time favorite racetracks. It's going to be a blast for round 5 of the FSS Esports Spec Miata series.
Just, one of the great tracks is, the only way to put it. There's a reason that European drivers come over and just stand, sometimes with their chin on their chest when they think about a lap at Road Atlanta, and can't wait to get there as well. It's been great, obviously. Kyle, as always, thanks again so much. Huge thanks to Full Send Sims, also to 3P Logistics and Final Turn Motorsports for their support. Pleasure to call things with you as always, Kyle, and we look forward to being with you next Thursday when we head to Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta. Cannot wait. Take care, everybody.